Okie dokie. So going in alphabetical order, I did Toronto yesterday. Vancouver missed the playoffs. I've already done discussions on their offseason. So now we're up to Vegas. And Vegas is still a highly contentious issue because of how Game 7 ended. I will say this. As a Canuck fan, I still remember 1989. I still remember Game 7 in overtime. I felt that Joel Otto kicked the puck into the net. At that point, it didn't have to be a distinct kicking motion. The goal stood. That was the end of the series. That was the end of the Canucks year. And then I got to watch the Calgary Flames hold up a Stanley Cup a couple months later. Eventually, you let it go on some level. And I see that happening. I think with Vegas, what's important is to look at last year, look at this year. So last year, they have 109 points. They go to the finals. 51, 24, and 7 record. This year, 43, 32, and 7 record, 93 points. And they lose in round 1. Now, there's a lot of ups and downs over that season. And there are a lot of really, really great stories and some challenges as well. Early on in the year, they look like an expansion team. Early on in the year, they're struggling. Just nothing's working for them. Then they get it together, and then it starts falling apart again when February rolls around. And it looks like, well, if they make the playoffs, they're out in the first round. They were only a few points ahead of Arizona at one point. Then they bring in Stone. Stone turns things around. Things are going great. And then they get kind of cold going into the playoffs. But that's okay because they'd already clinched third place. They were really all over the map this year. They still end up with 93 points. They still make the playoffs. And they are still easily the most successful expansion team since 1967. 1967 expansion, of course, I always kind of have an asterisk with because they added 6 teams. They went from 6 teams to 12, and the 6 brand new teams they brought in were all in the same conference. So it to me, that feels like it's different than what we've seen with Vegas, where they're the only expansion team coming in against 30 established teams. And even though the expansion rules were better for Vegas than everybody else, it takes a smart general manager to take advantage. Now, of course, the general manager's changed. It's Kelly McCrimmon, but that's just semantics from everything I've seen until the day comes that it's not. I've seen a lot of cases in the past where you get 2 guys in a room and it's like, all right, these guys are pretty much in agreement on everything. This is great. Okay, now we're going to change your job titles. It's no big deal. Don't worry about it. And then one of the guys who gets job title change goes, I've got this offer for a job somewhere else, and I think I'm going to take it. So right now everything's good with Vegas. And when you look at the numbers, last year Karlsson had 43 goals. That was too many, and it led to expectations being too high. Haula with 29, of course, he was injured a lot this year, so you can forget all about him being a 20-goal scorer. And now Haula's kind of the sacrificial lamb very often. Because where does he fit in when he comes back? James Neal, of course, 25 goals. A lot of them were in the first half of the season, but it's still noteworthy that he had 25 goals. Fleury, 29, 13, and 4 record, 2.24 goals against, 927 save percentage. And I think last year was Marc-Andre Fleury's best year as a National Hockey League goaltender. I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that due to injury, he didn't play as much as otherwise expected, but, that remains to be seen. This year, Karlsson fell to 25 goals. I think William Karlsson at 25 goals, I think that's a more realistic total. I think he could end up with 25, 27 any given season, which is pretty darn good, considering the guy is impossible to move off the puck. He's fantastic defensively. He's a very, very good player. Tuck had 20 goals. Part of the reason that Haula can kind of be forgotten is Tuck. Eakin with 22 goals. And yeah, it's a pretty good bunch they've got here, and of course Eakin's one as well that they look at and say maybe they could move off of him. Now the interesting thing too is that Fleury, his record 35, 21, and 5, 2.51 goals against average, 913 save percentage. I didn't think Fleury played as well this year as last year. That could be problematic because what I see with Vegas and with their goaltending is a lot of uncertainty behind Fleury, and they need to fix that. They need to do what Boston did with Halak, what the Islanders did with Leonard, Dallas with Hudobin. There seems to be a need for a 1B goaltender, a guy who can play 30, 35 games take a lot of that weight off of Fleury, and really truly have a goaltending tandem. And we didn't feel like we had that this year. It felt like Gerard Gallant was afraid to play Subban, and Subban was going so long in between starts that you could understand him not necessarily playing well. So they need a backup goaltender that Gallant's going to have some faith in, and we'll see what they do in the offseason. It's going to be tricky because there's no cap space. The Vegas Golden Knights right now are a team that has negative cap space for next year because, of course, Clarkson's $5.25 million, which ends up going on the long-term injured reserve at the start of the year. But they're still greatly limited. And I mentioned Clarkson because, of course, yesterday Toronto fans were like, but you're forgetting Horton. Nah, I wasn't forgetting Horton. It's you look at the amount of cap space, and I can look and say this team has less cap space than everybody else. And in the case of Vegas, there really isn't the cap space. So if you looked at this team this year and you said, well, they lost 16 points, maybe we could improve via, and name your way of improving the team. It could be a challenge. If it involves spending extra money that they don't have, it's going to be a challenge. Now, when you look at the cap hits for these guys, collectively, it's high. Stone at $9.5 million, Stastny at $6.5 million. Carlson's got arbitration rights as a restricted free agent. He made $5.25 million this year. He'll probably get a raise. It won't be anywhere near what he would have got if George McPhee had given him an extended contract last summer. So if it had been a 4-year contract last summer with that 43 goals, it likely would have been in the $7.5 million range. Maybe it can be 6 based on the 25 goals he had this year. Maybe you can talk him down. Riley Smith at $5 million. Depending on which game Riley Smith's playing, either it's decent or that's a bargain. Smith goes through a lot of, I don't know, he slumps. This season felt more like a Riley Smith season than last year for me as a guy who followed him in Boston and Dallas. I looked at his numbers. I looked at people frustrated with him, and I said, yeah, that's about right. I saw that in Boston. I saw it in Dallas. I saw it in Florida, too. But I think he's worth the $5 million. Marchessault's $5 million. That's a steal. And then there's an extension that kicks in with Marchessault, too. So, no, there isn't. No, he's at $5 million. It's a good contract. Anyways, Pacioretty's extension kicks in this summer. I know that extension kicks in at $7 million. Did they get $7 million worth out of Pacioretty? No. 22 goals this year. He was injured a lot, yes. At times, he looked like the 30-goal scoring Pacioretty of Montreal days, and at times he was invisible out there. So they need more of a consistent effort from Patches for sure. Eakin at $3.85 million. It's on the board because it's on the board. I honestly, for 20 goals for what Cody Eakin does, I don't have a problem with $3.85 million. If they're looking to make cap space somewhere, I don't think Cody Eakin would be the guy I'd move, but that's me. Belmar is unrestricted free agent. If he wants to come back, he'll come back. He's not going to get a huge raise if he comes back. Nosek, restricted free agent with arbitration rights. He'll be back. And again, much the same as with Belmar, it won't be a big raise. Nikita Gusev, restricted free agent arbitration rights. Everybody lost their mind when Gusev came over. Like, oh, Vegas gets this huge advantage. Screw Vegas. Everybody's favoring Vegas. Why does the NHL favor Vegas? Notice Gusev didn't play because he hasn't played on North American ice. So, Vegas, and I thought wisely, decided not to mess with their lineup. Pirie's a UFA. There's no way Brandon Pirie's coming back. I can't see it. I don't think Gerard Gallant was a fan of Brandon Pirie. I don't think he wanted to play him. I think there was a lot of playing around to make sure he didn't have to clear waivers because I think they knew that they'd lose him on waivers. But once all of that fun little goal-scoring period was done, he was invisible. And I think he'll get a contract offer this summer. He'll probably get a decent one. Wouldn't be surprised if he gets one from Vancouver as an example. But he's a useful guy, and he has his goal-scoring streaks here and there. But I don't think he'll be back. Carpenter, I don't think Carpenter will be back either. I think Carpenter is a guy they'll move on from. He had a great season last year. A waiver wire pickup for them from San Jose. This year was much more of a misadventure, just in general. I don't think he'll be back because he's easily replaced, and I think they'll be looking to make some upgrades with affordable players. That's Kelly McCrimmon's challenge this summer. Look through the UFA uh, ranks and find somebody you can get for a decent price who can help you upgrade that bottom six. And Alex Tuck's extension kicks in this summer. He's at $4.75 million for a long time. But based on this year, $4.75 million is a decent cap hit. The length, anyways. On the blue line, they've got Schultz, who's a restricted free agent this summer. So they have to negotiate with him again. Again, without the cap space, might be tricky. Theodore at $5.2 million. It's decent value for Theodore. Miller at 3.88 is he's a target for Vegas fans. Often it seems when they have a bad game, they talk a lot about Miller. I found Merrill to be more of a frustration than Miller personally, but Merrill doesn't make 3.88 million. And England's a UFA. If he wants to come back, he'll come back. He won't go anywhere but Vegas. That's not going to happen. The one thing that works in Vegas's favor as well when we talk about contracts and negotiations, these players want to be here. These players want to play for this franchise. Therefore, it makes it a little bit easier for a general manager to sit down and talk term and talk money with them. Marc-Andre Fleury's contract extension kicks in this summer at $7 million a year, and Subban is a restricted free agent with arbitration rights. Now, restricted free agent versus UFA, the difference is, and I say this because I know there's Vegas fans that watch my videos that may not be up on all the lingo and all that. Restricted free agent means that all they have to do is make that guy an offer before June 30th, and they keep the rights. Now, if they don't make an offer or qualifying offer of any sort, that then becomes an unrestricted free agent who can go wherever he wants for whatever he wants somewhere else. I do wonder if Malcolm Subban gets qualified, and if he remains their property July 1st and then they have to work out a contract with him, or maybe they let him go. Maybe Kelly McCrimmon finds somebody somewhere else. Arbitration rights means that if Vegas and the player sit down and they can't work out a contract, that at some point an independent arbiter comes in and goes, you're right. Okay, we'll go with your number. Or he comes up with his own. He goes, yeah, you guys are both full of crap. Here's your number. It's for 1 year. Come back and talk to me in a year. We'll see what happens. Now, with Vegas, the interesting thing, too, is they have some pretty good prospects, but I get nervous with prospects and draft picks. They just keep trading, like Suzuki to Montreal and Brandstrom to Ottawa. Cody Glass makes this team next year. I thought he should have made the team a while ago, so he kind of has to make the team this coming year. Nicholas Hague on the blue line, maybe. So, again, if you're looking for ways to upgrade and you don't have cap space, your prospects come in really handy there. They're on entry-level contracts, nice and cheap, and they're usually a little faster than the other guys. They got a little bit of energy, and they're trying to prove themselves, which is a good quality to have in a hockey player. And Zach Whitecloud I wrote down because he's 22 years of age. He's playing for their AHL franchise, and he may very well get an extended look next year if they decide to move somebody on the blue line. The thing with Vegas is the team that lost in the first round is likely going to be very similar to the team you see in October. So for people who are of the belief that McPhee built a great team, for those who believe that the owner is right, that this team's going to win a Stanley Cup, you guys are still on the right track. For people who have some concern that this team lost 16 points and went out in the first round and didn't look quite as good as last year, I can kind of understand that. They had Fleury standing on his head that first year. They didn't have that this year, and it made a difference. They have spent a lot of money. One of the nice things about a new team coming into the league is having cap space, having the ability to save that money and take your time and play it like a chess game. This is not being played like chess. No, this is almost like a GTA way of doing the whole thing. And the way Vegas has done it is they don't just plug the game in and slowly build up. Nah, they went in and they got their cash. All kinds of shark cash, like the shark card. Anyways, I did that in GTA a few times, so I'm just using that as an example. Where you basically you say, you know what, I'm gonna make it so that I can get all the good stuff early. I don't want to do all. So there's kind of that feeling I've had with Vegas. It's right from the beginning that via getting a good expansion draft and being able to put together a good team right out of the gate, that they've kind of skipped over all that. So they've kind of skipped over a lot of the things that first, second, third year franchises go through. And I do wonder if, because they've skipped all of that, if they might be more prone to fall back sooner than some of those other teams have. Now, of course, those teams took a long time to build up, but I do wonder about that with Vegas. That's my one concern. They have a really solid forward group. Their blue line, I still think, needs a little bit of help. I think Brandstrom would have been great there, but that's gone. They've got Stone, so there's room to improve things in the offseason. I know there's a lot of fans excited about Schultz, and Haig is still there in the minors as well. And those are the ones that project as being most ready. So I know there's other prospects out there for them, but the ones that are most ready are Schultz, who was signed out of college, and Haig on the blue line. But it'll be interesting to see what they do this summer. And what do they do about the goaltending? Fleury's got to get more rest, and you've got to make it so that when Fleury gets hurt, you're not like, well, we're screwed. So there you go. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.